Results are in from Tuesday's primary races in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Vermont, and Connecticut. In Wisconsin, businessman Tim Michels won the Republican primary for governor. He was endorsed by former President Trump, and he'll face incumbent Governor Tony Evers in November. In the GOP Senate primary in Connecticut, Leora Levy beat the party-endorsed candidate. She also received an endorsement from former President Trump. Vermont Congressman Peter Welch won the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate there. He's running for the seat of retiring Senator Pat Leahy. And progressive incumbent Congresswoman Ilhan Omar won a close Democratic primary contest against centrist former Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels. That's in Minnesota's 5th congressional district. Incumbent Republican Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler, one of 10 U.S. House Republicans to vote for the impeachment of President Trump, conceded her August 2nd primary race to Trump-backed Joe Kent Tuesday night. She's the third incumbent Republican to vote against Trump for impeachment and lose this primary season. For more on these races, I want to bring in Doug Heye and Ray Zaccaro. Doug's a Republican strategist and the founder of Douglas Media. Ray is a Democratic strategist. Doug, let's start with you. Talk to us about former President Trump's impact on these races in Wisconsin and Washington. What does it tell us about the trajectory of his sway over GOP voters?
Well, he's the alpha dog of the Republican Party. There's no doubt about it. What we're trying to figure out, I think, is, what really that influence is. We know in past races, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio being good examples, that he'll give you a third of that vote. And then beyond that, it depends on the state, the campaigns, whether it's an open primary or a closed primary. But clearly, most Republicans would want to start their campaign with a Donald Trump endorsement as opposed to having him opposed.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's changing, Doug. I mean, are we seeing an increasing influence, a decreasing influence? Because the word was a few weeks ago he may have a declining influence.
Well, I think the word is always different in different states and what different rules are. Again, in a lot of states, he gives you a third. He had candidates who won with 31% of the vote. He's had candidates who've lost with 31% of the vote. So I think this is an ongoing process, and we won't really know what that is until we've really gone through all of these primaries.
Let me shift to you, Ray. What were your big takeaways from Tuesday in those primaries, and what do they signal ahead of November?
Well, thanks, Scott. I think one of the interesting things about the primary results is what we've seen repeatedly throughout the country, that Republican nominees keep getting more and more extreme. We're seeing Republican nominees and winning primaries who are anti-democracy messages, who are promoting conspiracy theories, who are showing support for January 6th insurrection efforts and the efforts to overthrow the results of the election. And I think what the most important takeaway is that currently the Republican victors in many of these primaries are really more pro-Trump than they are pro-democracy, pro-America, or even Republican. They're not typical standard bearers of the Republican Party of yesterday, but they are very much promoting the Donald Trump MAGA themes of what appears to be the standard of the Republican Party moving forward.
And we saw that in Wisconsin, as Tim Michels will now be the GOP nominee against incumbent Governor Evers. Let's talk about Wyoming, Ray. Primaries next week. Liz Cheney has asked Democrats to register as Republicans. It's open, maybe having an impact on that primary. Are there enough Democrats in Wyoming, or are they responding to her call to make a difference?
Look, Democrats need to do everything they can to maintain control of the House, and expand the majority in the Senate. That should be the biggest priority for any Democratic voter. Liz Cheney has done a laudable job, being one of very few Republicans who have been outspoken in their efforts to investigate what, Scott, frankly, you've reported on probably more than anybody, the January 6th coup attempt. And those efforts have been very important for really any patriot to support. However, Democrats need to keep focused. We need to hold the majority in the House. Otherwise, we'll see a real turnaround from efforts to get to the bottom of January 6th to efforts to chase baseless conspiracy theories all over the place.
Now, here we are, 48 hours since the search at Mar-a-Lago, a lifetime in Trump news cycles. Doug, How are you seeing that search impacting primaries? Is it possible it impacts primaries in the short term?
Well, there aren't that many primaries left, obviously. And so what we've seen is an increase on Trump supporters of enthusiasm. So they're more likely to turn out potentially in a primary or in a general. But this is where it's hard to really delineate what exactly this means politically, because Democrats have been in a pretty depressed place as far as their voter motivation has gone for November. And Biden's had a good week or so. And this is also something they've finally seen Merrick Garland act when Merrick Garland's been the butt of a lot of criticism from Democrats. So there's increased enthusiasm on the Democratic side as well. Makes it hard to this close after we've had the FBI visit to Mar-a-Lago to really determine what the political outcomes might be from this.
That's a good point. Primary season's nearly over. It's general election time soon. Ray, let me throw the question to you. Any impact this could have on Democratic turnout, or are Democrats at the saturation point where they've heard enough revelations about Donald Trump that they're going to turn out anyhow?
Well, look, I don't like to make too many predictions, but I think you're going to see very few Democratic to Trump-supported candidate cross over in the general election. I think the support's going to be pretty clear, and the Democratic Party is going to have a lot to run on. The point that Doug raised is very important, which is that Joe Biden has, in fact, had a very good week. That Democrats have shown, as the Senate has broken for the August recess, and candidates and members of Congress are going back home to talk to their constituents, they're going home to talk about victories on a bipartisan infrastructure bill, the first bipartisan gun safety legislation in decades in this country, the most serious climate legislation ever passed in this country, the ability to secure competition and improve competition with China on chip manufacturing, and not to mention the fact that Democrats have a rallying cry unlike any that we've ever had before, which is in every election cycle, the idea of Roe v. Wade being overturned and women losing their right to reproductive health care and abortion in this country has been a theoretical, and now it's real. And in states like Wisconsin, where there are 19th century laws on the books that make medical procedures outlawed, these laws date back to periods of time where we didn't even have basic understanding of the same levels of science that we have right now. So women are looking at their own rights on the ballot this time, whereas Republican candidates are trotting out conspiracy theories, are trotting out anti-democratic and anti-democracy messages, and are the only thing that they're talking about in favor that sounds like a forward movement is what happens when they take over the House and start investigating everything that they can get their hands on that are in support of conspiracy theories.
And both sides would agree. It feels like we're in the home stretch, though, right? We're getting there, less than 100 days. It's a different feel to campaigns when you hit the home stretch. Ray Zaccaro, Doug Heye, thank you both.
Thanks so much.